Good afternoon or good morning, everyone. Letting folks get settled in here virtually, and we'll get started here in just a minute or two. Good to see some familiar names and faces joining us, and looks like we didn't scare too many people away in session one, Abraham, so well done. That's a good sign. And I see some new faces as well. So really great to see you guys this morning or this afternoon, depending on where this broadcast finds you. We've got some folks coming to us from the Alaska territories. I know it's definitely morning up there for you guys still. Hopefully it's not too hot. We've got some wonderful temps here in the heart of the country. We're mid 70s, low humidity, and sunny. So this is a treat this time of year. Great to see everyone. I want to welcome everyone to session two of our Walking in Balance series. Uh, where does the healer go for healing? And we're just really happy to have everyone here. And I'm Steve Steiny. I'm one of the managers here with the National American Indian Alaska Native ATTC. I know some of you, and it's good to see some familiar names and faces. We have a couple of wonderful speakers and a special guest today here to present an ongoing dialogue, hopefully, about ways to take care of yourself, as well as some cultural considerations as we have our discussion. So I'm going to go through a few introductory slides and reintroduce our guests, or our speakers and our special guest, and then we're hoping to hear from all of you as we conclude today's session. We're going to try and have some time at the end to do a Q&A. And I think last session, Abraham, I kind of watched the chat, and we can kind of, check with people too if they've got questions during the presentation. So again, I want to welcome everyone to session two, doing healing work in our communities. Where does the healer go for healing? I'm sure, as most of you are aware, this event is brought to you by the National American Indian Alaska Native Addiction Technology Transfer Center. We're located at the University of Iowa, and I'm broadcasting to you live from the University of Iowa campus here at the College of Public Health. We are part of a larger national ATTC network made up of 10 regional centers, a national Hispanic and Latinx center, and a ATTC coordinating office at the University of Missouri. Again, as most of you are aware, this project, this event is supported and funded by SAMHSA. The content of today's presentation is developed by the presenters, and the opinions and ideas expressed today do not necessarily reflect the views or policies of SAMHSA, HHS, or the American Indian Alaska Native ATTC. We are going to offer two NADAC-approved CEUs for today's webinar. You will have an opportunity to request those when you receive a follow-up post-event email from us. So you can request those at that time. And I'm talking with Abraham as well about what slides we can make available. And we are recording today's event. So if you have a colleague or friend that wasn't able to join us, we will include a link to our YouTube archive. And this event can be viewed at a later date or at your convenience. Lastly, we will be posting a link to a very short survey. We would ask that you consider filling this out. We'd love to hear back from folks. It's a great way for us to get direct feedback, but it also shows our funders that we are doing what we say we are doing. with the funds that we're receiving. So if you have a moment to fill out this survey today, that would be wonderful. If you don't, you'll have another opportunity to do that when you receive the follow-up email after this event is over. The survey itself is brief, it's confidential, and there are a couple of opportunities for short answer questions so we can hear from you in your own words. So if you have any questions about that survey, please reach out to me and I'm happy to talk with you about that. I know we're gathered here virtually today, but before we get started, I want to take a few moments to acknowledge the land and pay respect to the indigenous nations whose homelands were forcibly taken and inhabited. Please take a moment to read this land acknowledgement, which was created by 3 former members of our ATTC team here, Ella and Keely Driscoll and Sean Bear from the Meskwaki and Winnebago nations, respectively. Thank you. Well, without further delay, I want to reintroduce our speakers today. My colleague and friend, Abraham Bearpaw, is the author of the Walking in Balance wellness program. And he's also, I love this term, a cultural activist, and has been in recovery himself. And I really enjoyed getting to know Abraham over these last few months as we've been planning these calls. So I want to welcome Abraham. I also have with us Dr. Jennie Barnes. I also consider her a colleague and a friend, just getting to know her as well. She is working in the mental health field and is serving a wide variety of patients from diverse backgrounds. So both Abraham and Jennie are in Oklahoma area. So I love my Oklahoma folks down there. Great connections with Southern Plains Tribal Health and just good people there in Oklahoma. So glad to have them here. And of course, our special guest, Mr. Jim Wikel, he is out there in Oregon, but has connections to Oklahoma as well. Jim is Seneca-Cayuga, and have really gotten to know Jim over the last 3 or 4 years as we work together on many virtual events. And one of these days, Jim, you and I are going to meet in person. I promise you. It's on my list of things to do. So hopefully our paths will cross sooner than later. But Jim Wikel is here, and he is a peer recovery support specialist, and really happy to have him here as well. So with that, I'm going to stop talking here, Abraham, and get the floor turned over to you and Dr. Barnes and Jim, and we'll get started today. So thanks again, everyone, for joining us.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Thank you to those who are returning, and thank you for those who this is your first session today. We really appreciate you coming on today. We're going to talk about wellness, right? Indigenous wellness, indigenous teachings. You know, we're here to share with one another, and it's just really awesome. Really great healing energy. I'm really excited. Last session was really awesome. So I'm really happy to be back here with all of you guys today. So before we get started, I would like to ask Jim Wikel to get us started in a good way by giving us a blessing. Hold on, Jim.
Well, go, Abraham. Okay, first of all, I'm going to say Niawaskinos Wego. Greetings, everyone. I'm glad that you're all here, and I'm grateful for your well-being. Hano Nagoha is Negatsunori, Otayoni Niwa Gashauti, Anat Waga, Ni Gaikono, Ni Hanawige, Niwa Quinceday. So I just introduced myself in Gaikono, Cayuga language. I told you my name. It is Hano Nagoha is, means his mind is made up. My clan, which is Wolf, from my mother's side, we're matrilineal people. and my nation, which is the Seneca-Cayuga Nation of Oklahoma. I would also say Jim Gyazo. That's what most people know me as. That's what I'm called. Currently, I'm in Salem, Oregon, and I work for a tribal organization here. And I am on the stolen and occupied lands of the Kalapuya peoples, who are part of the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde. And so I'm going to say the short version this week of our Ganohanyok, our Thanksgiving speech. And I'm going to say it in Gaikono and Cayuga. And basically what it's going to do, it starts off with asking us all to kind of pause and be mindful, which is one of the teachings that has been presented here. Be mindful, pause, and reflect on why we're here, and to listen so we can become as one, and our minds can become as one. And then I'm going to acknowledge us as the people, and then basically acknowledge and give thanks to the Mother Earth and the plants and the medicines and the trees and the animals and the waters and the thunders and all our relatives in the natural world that give us life and help sustain our life. So anyway, I'm going to start off with saying Swagwego, Swati Hosios, Nigai Waka. That put in a hole in Yone on Gueso. That put in a hole in Yone, Dunoha Ojade. That put in a hole in Yone, Hadwana Ragre, Ono Vatrani. That put in a hole in Yone, Yani Yota. That put in a hole in Yone, Ori Hadoni. That put in a hole in Yone, Gadino. That put in a hole in Yone, Onagao, that put in a hole in Yone, Gain Heko. That put in a hole in Yone, Deo Winye. The Tini hole in Yone, Tiso, Hado and the doggies. This one in the hole in Yone said, Wisha Dika Kakwatis. The Tini hole in Yone, Tiso, Aso Hinka, and the Tini hole in Yone, Odiso Daja. This one in the hole in Yone said, Wagoa, Scanadia. Diatinho Honyone, Nagwarigi, Hadahoya Gahono. That's one of the Honyones and Goadiso, Danato, Nagat 20 Yagi, Gaikadak, Nohino, Danato. And that last line I really like. Danato means that's all. But what it says is that's the best I could do. That's all I could think of right now. And I really like that, because as we go along in this life, and as Indigenous people trying to navigate a society that's been imposed on us, and trying to navigate basically in two worlds, all that's asked of us is the best that we can do every day. So, Yahweh.
What Jim? We really appreciate that. Awesome. Thank you for getting us started in a good way with that great energy, that great blessing. So also thank you, Steve, for your introduction, and that land acknowledgement also. That's really great to be mindful of our connection, of where our feet are, right, and where we're standing and how we got to be here. So that's really awesome. So Sione God, Yon Dawado. Hello everyone. My name is Abraham Bearpaw. I am happy to be joining you from rainy Oklahoma. So I'm in Tahlequah, and it's not 100-something degrees today, though. So that's really awesome. So I'm grateful for the rain and grateful for a break in the heat. I'd like to introduce my partner. Actually, I will let her introduce herself. Dr. Barnes.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I'm also here in rainy Oklahoma, a little farther away from Abraham. I'm not in Tahlequah. I'm in Salisaw, but not too far. It's very muggy and gross here, but also in kind of a pretty way. But I'm glad that everybody came back. And like Abraham said, I'm really thankful for the participation that we had last week. And I'm excited to get into the topics we have today.
Awesome. Wado, Jenny. So I'm going to go ahead and share our workbook really quick. And so the workbook, a couple people requested this from me, and they just sent me an email, and I sent them a digital copy. So this is what the curriculum of the Walking in Balance program, this is what it entails. I have to give a shout out to Dr. Barnes, my partner, for designing the logo. She's super creative and talented. So, and so the overview, Walking in Balance is a culturally centered self-improvement and prevention program. So what are we trying to prevent? Overstress, anxiety, substance abuse, right? The Walking in Balance curriculum has been used for career readiness, has been used in parenting programs, has been used in diabetes prevention, also diabetes burnout prevention. So really, this is just about us being able to be well, to share these wellness teachings with one another. So you can see up here, the first 4 components, that's what we covered last week. So we covered wellness, right? We aspire to be spiritually, mentally, physically, emotionally, socially well. Dang, that's a lot, right? We covered mindfulness. We aspire to be present in this moment without judging ourselves or others. We covered gratitude and how important that is in our life, and what a great traditional coping skill that natives have been practicing since time immemorial, right? We aspire to live in gratitude and practice it daily. And then the last component, self-compassion. We aspire to be compassionate to ourselves at all times. We aspire to forgive, accept, and love ourselves unconditionally. So with that, we are going to move into our next components for the day. And so, the Walking in Balance curriculum, it's really about finding, linking our wellness to our understanding of the world, our self-talk, and eventually having that produce a fulfilled life of wellness, right? That fulfilled part, that comes from, really service and our connection. You hear a lot of people who are well off. They are unhappy, right? They suffer from a lot of the ills, of our society. And so, I believe it's that lack of connection. And, service is one of those things that promotes that. And I don't got to tell you guys, I'm in a group of 60 participants, 60 people who perform service on a daily basis, right? So you guys are in the thick of it. And I appreciate so much all the work that you guys are doing. You guys rock. You guys are awesome. You guys are making our world and our communities better places. You're helping our people to heal. And I think that's a really big deal. And so in using that self-compassion, I hope that you're telling yourself every day that you're beautiful, that you're strong, that you're a big deal, that you're amazing, that you're powerful. We deserve to hear these things. And, you guys definitely are you are the best of what our country has to offer. And we thank you. And so I'm really hopeful for the future. I'm excited for everything that's going to happen, because with the work that you guys are doing, coupled with, other curriculums and the Walking in Balance curriculum, we can definitely continue to bring our world back into balance, right? And so, that's really what the goal is, to have balance first in our lives, then bring balance to our households, and ultimately bring balance to our communities and places of work, right? So that's really what our goal is. So let me see here. I'm going to start the slideshow. So we went over this stuff, last time, so I don't have to really touch on it a lot. Cherokee people, we've practiced these positive coping skills found in our culture since time immemorial, so that we could live in balance. But not just Cherokee people, Native people, tribal people from other countries, these are universal values. And so that's what I think is really awesome. It's really cool when we can focus on what we have in common and focus on wellness. I know when I was newly sober in the halls of AA, I just thought it was awesome. Politics didn't matter. Religion didn't matter. We had that goal of helping each other to heal. And that's really what Walking in Balance tries to focus on. So, but like I said, we went over this last time. So our objectives, we want to learn how to integrate these Walking in Balance components into our daily living by establishing healthy habits, right? So how can we apply these teachings to help build resiliency in our lives and the lives of our clients? Ultimately by, developing an individual action plan. So here are the teachings I just shared. And this is where in Cherokee culture, this is how these teachings were perpetuated through our ceremonies, through our spirituality, gathering and making medicine, when we played our games, when we spoke our language, when we practiced our arts, when we told our stories, when we went hunting and gathering, and our relationships also. And so now we find that our people, we may be disconnected from these teachings. We may live off reservation. We may not have, we may have grown up in households where there was addiction and violence, We may be still suffering from intergenerational and historical trauma. And you know what? That is okay. We are here to heal. And, everybody, in Cherokee culture, we believe everybody's journey is sacred and specific and different for a reason, right? And we don't believe in telling people how they should live their lives or what they need to do. But we instead, offer these teachings so when people are ready, then we are here with that resource, right? So we're going to start today by practicing what is the buzzword of, the last, 5 years? Self-care. Everybody's talking about self-care, which is awesome because when I was growing up, nobody was talking about self-care, and I don't think it was mentioned. The entire time I was going to school ever, they said, suck it up. My mom had a saying, she said, cold facts are cold and life is hard, and so, people just in American culture, we kind of have that feeling, right? You're supposed to pull yourself up by the bootstraps and just kind of grit your teeth and bear through it. But now we're seeing, a lot of studies are showing over stress, over anxiety, high cortisol levels. All of this tends to take a toll on your health after a while, right? Unfortunately, I happen to live in a state, in a community where our life expectancy is toward the bottom range of the United States. And a lot of it has to do with we do not give ourselves permission to make the time to take care of ourselves, right? But historically, traditionally, Cherokee people and Native people, we understood the better you take care of yourself, the better you can take care of others. The more in balance we feel, the better we feel, the happier we are, the more fulfilled we are, right? Our schedules are crazy though. I teach walking in balance for a lot of different groups, and I hear the same thing all the time. They're like, hey, I can barely go to the bathroom without, you know what I mean? People banging on the door and the kids need mom and the cat and dog and just fighting and everything else. And I totally understand. Our schedules are unreasonable. Our expectations are unreasonable. But unless we're going to all become hermits and go live out in the woods, we have to exist in this society right now. And you know what? That's all right. That's what we're here to do, is to help each other manage these situations, cope a little better, and, have more fulfilled lives, right? So that's awesome. So, like I said, it really starts with taking care of ourselves and how good we're able to do that. But first, we have to give ourselves permission to do so. And that's really where it starts. Once we get busy, our self-care is kind of the first thing that goes out the window, right? But, Cherokee people, we've always understood that rest is just as important as work, and you can't burn the candle at both ends and expect to have positive results, right? So once we give ourselves permission to practice self-care, I do the entire Walking in Balance program every day in about 45 minutes. That includes my 30 minutes of exercise. And I'm not perfect. I don't always do it. Some days I do 20 minutes of exercise, and some days I only have 5 minutes. You know what? I'll do something for my self-care for those 5 minutes. But this is a list of some of my self-care exercises that I do. Every day, I do my gratitude exercises, right? When I'm in the shower. I do positive affirmations every day when I wash my hands. I make sure I go to the doctor now. I know we don't want to hear that bad news, but I have had a physician tell me before, you know what? If you would have come in earlier, this wouldn't have been that big a deal, right? So, going to our doctor's appointments, going to our therapy appointments, getting our 8 hours of sleep. Every night, I give myself permission to sleep. I congratulate myself on an awesome day. I do my what went well list. What went well today? I do that when I'm brushing my teeth. And that just makes me feel good about everything that went on that day. And then I give myself permission to sleep. And that really helps me. And so I also say no for self-care. I am a recovering people pleaser. So this is a little hard, right? And so having endured trauma as a youth, that was kind of my role. And one of the ways that I coped was to be a people pleaser, right? But I know now that it no longer serves me. That survival skill I picked up, I don't need it anymore. And that's okay. So now I can develop some new coping skills, right? Eat healthy. I do my exercise and doing things just for fun. Just because we're grown-ups doesn't mean our life should be just all work and not enjoyable at all. So I hope you can find things in your life that bring you enjoyment. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Barnes so she can share some of the supporting science behind the teaching of self-care.
Yeah, so obviously in general, we're talking about how to move toward a more balanced and peaceful life. And obviously that's going to require us to care for ourselves properly. And most importantly, see ourselves as worth caring for, which kind of, and showing up for, which goes back to the self-compassion piece that we we're talking about the other day. Because if we don't see ourselves as worth caring for, then we're probably not going to do it, right? So without self-care, we will drain ourselves of energy, and we're going to end up in a state of burnout, which I can tell you from personal experience is not pleasant. I don't know if anyone here has experienced burnout. There's lots of different levels of burnout. There's emotional burnout, there's physical burnout, there's adrenal burnout. There's a lot that goes into it, but it's unpleasant. And I want to help people avoid that / recover from it, because I think a lot of people are there, unfortunately. We cannot pour from an empty cup. So we must fill our cup by engaging in holistic self-care practices as often as possible. As we talked about before, we live in a society that makes practicing self-care very difficult. If we're not constantly productive, we're made to feel like we're lazy. And to make matters worse, this really gets under my skin a lot. We as individuals are often blamed when we're struggling to function for not practicing enough self-care, not doing enough, instead of recognizing how the systems that we're a part of are actually designed in a way that prevents us from having enough time, proper time, to engage in self-care. However, though, there are ways that we can slowly start to implement better self-care and decrease our sense of overwhelm. We do have to give ourselves permission to do that, though, because often we think that if we give ourselves permission for self-care, we're somehow being lazy or unproductive because we have internalized those societal messages, right? So remember, though, we blame society, rightfully so, because that's where we're getting a lot of that, and yet we are society. So the more that we normalize and advocate for self-care ourselves, it not only obviously is going to improve our lives, but it starts to have a ripple effect, and it changes society as a whole to be more focused on self-care, which will make it easier for us over time. I think this is starting to happen, but not so much in the area that I live in, but on more of a broader scale. We're talking about it more, at least, but it is still, in my opinion, focused mostly on individual self-care and not so much on systemic change so that individual self-care is even possible. All areas of self-care are important, even though we tend to only focus on the bare minimum of physical self-care. But to learn easy ways to start prioritizing your psychological health more, in the workbook, I've included a link to the DBT skills website again that I talked about last time. And that helps you learn mindfulness and emotional regulation and distress tolerance, interpersonal effectiveness, and so on and so forth. I've also provided information on how to seek out therapy and the importance of living in the present moment, being aware of what you consume and how it affects your mind, and other psychological self-care tips. For physical self-care, I've listed a wonderful website. And Abraham, you have the workbook pulled up? Yeah, you do, because you showed it a second ago. We might show the list on there, but for physical self-care, I've listed a website that teaches you about proper nutrition from evidence-based literature. It's called nutritionfacts.org. Some of you may already be aware of it. The guy that runs that, his name is Dr. Greger. He actually has a couple of books, probably more than two, but two that I've read myself. But one of them is How Not to Die, which talks about the top 15 leading causes of death in the US and all the ways that our food impacts those things. There's also another one called How Not to Diet, to help us kind of get rid of this diet culture mindset. So things of that nature kind of will help you learn the truth about nutrition, because there's a lot of misinformation out there that's not based in science. So I've also included some information on how to practice good sleep hygiene, how to stay hydrated, allowing your body to rest, earthing and grounding outside. Some people may not have heard of that. Some people think it's strange, but it's where you put your bare feet. You can sit on the ground as well, but it's helpful to put your bare feet because of the way in which the feet interact with the electromagnetic field of the earth. It sounds strange at first, but I've included a link there to help you understand how that works from a scientific basis. It's pretty cool. Also, if the term exercise has any negative connotations for you or that demotivates you in any way, think of ways in which you can engage in joyful movement or mindful movement, some way to kind of get your body moving in a way that feels good to it instead of feeling painful or forced. And that always reminds me of, I think Abraham mentioned this last time, but there's a YouTube channel called Yoga with Adrienne. And she has yoga videos for an hour or for 5 minutes and on every topic for free. It's amazing. And it's a way you can kind of start to do that practice at home and not have to worry about people looking at you. But her motto is find what feels good. And I've taken that and kind of applied it to all, well, everything as much as possible, but especially physical movement, to ask myself what movement feels good to me and is fun and motivating. So like for me, I like to dance, right? I'll just turn on music in my house and dance. And that's like a good cardio workout. It's better than having to go to a gym that I don't like and be watched by people and all that stuff, right? So there's a way to move your body in a way that feels fun and exciting and not necessarily related to that like exercise mindset, if that is a deterrent for you. So for spiritual self-care, it's very helpful to spend time in nature and to discover what brings you joy and prioritize that more, to kind of unplug from technology, which I think is really hard for a lot of people to do, but very important. Reading inspirational material, things of that nature. There's a really great book for those of you who want to connect more spiritually and kind of learn how to live in the present moment, which will help you a lot with the mindfulness section that we talked about last time. And it's called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. It's a really great eye-opening book for sure. Keep in mind, though, that while you're implementing these self-care practices that we're talking about, it's really difficult at first to change habits. Later on in the workbook towards the end, we have a section that talks about how to change habits and how to kind of set yourself up for success there. But it's also just really important to go very slowly and to implement kind of one thing at a time. Because if you try to implement, if you say, okay, I'm going to overhaul my lifestyle, I'm going to implement all these self-care practices, what's most likely to happen is you overwhelm yourself. Some people may be able to do it depending on their schedule, but you're likely to overwhelm yourself and you're gonna be like, this doesn't work, can't do it, I give up. So just focusing on what's one thing that you want to change, get that implemented, get that change going. And then once that's kind of part of your routine, then add something else. And we'll talk about that a few more times as we go through it, because it's a really important part of implementing all the things that we talk about. So we just want to make sure that the changes that you make are sustainable and not something that you're going to feel like is another task that you can't manage, added on to your already busy schedule. So as far as the question that we want to go over for today in this topic, it's what self-care practices would, or maybe you can think of one for now, what self-care practice would you like to add in? And you can think about this either from a physical standpoint, psychological standpoint, or a spiritual standpoint, or you can do one from all categories if you want to.
Thank you so much, Dr. Barnes. So for me, what self-care practices do you already use in each area? So one for me is my gratitude list. That's huge for me. I love it. It really sets the tone for my day. I'm in the shower anyway. You know what I mean? So, used to in the shower, I'd be thinking about my busy day, right? And just kind of would already stress myself out. Now I'm in that water and I'm kind of manifesting good things for my day. I'm feeling good. That just really starts me off really well. So how about you, Dr. Barnes?
I would say one that I'll say one I'm already doing and then one I want to add in. But for physical self-care, one thing I'm already doing is yoga. It's really hard. I really want to do long videos, but it's hard to fit those in. So like Abraham was saying earlier, some days I have a time for a 5-minute yoga video and she has that and I put that on, or I'll just do it myself. One thing that I want to add in more is more passive meditation. So being able to let, instead of doing the active meditation I talked about last time, I'm working on doing more passive meditation as well, which is hard when you have ADHD, but really good practice.
That's awesome. So Whitney put in the chat, morning meditation. She says, sticking with it, not just randomly. And so you talked about that, Dr. Barnes, right? Developing a habit, making it a habit instead of just kind of these hit and miss things.
Yes. And so even if especially if you're doing something like meditation, if you have 3 minutes, just do it for 3 minutes a day. At least you're getting into the habit of doing it, right? And eventually there'll be some days you'll have a little bit more time. You can do it for 10 minutes, right? But just being consistent with that practice, because if you think that, well, I don't have a full 30 minutes to do this practice, so I just won't do it at all. And then it kind of gets out of your routine. So even if you just do the things that you want to do just a couple minutes a day, it at least keeps it in your routine and kind of keeps it part of your daily vocabulary.
Yes. And, you talked about, what we were saying, our kind of mantra with walking in balance, something is better than nothing, right? Because all those little somethings, that 3-minute meditation, that 4-minute walk, that one salad, You know what I mean? All of these things are going to eventually, we can let go of that perfectionist kind of need for, to be perfect, right? And so that's awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Barnes. And thank you to Whitney. Alyssa says gardening, yoga, and basket weaving are good for my emotional, physical, spiritual, and emotional health. I would like to add in a bit more physical wind down practice before bed. So that's awesome. To be able to wind down. I'll give myself permission to sleep. And then I start with the exercise where you try to relax your body. Close my eyes, take a deep breath. My feet are relaxed, deep breath. My calves are relaxed, deep breath. And I work all the way up to my head. And you know what? Sometimes before I get to my head, I'm asleep. And so it really does work. So awesome. Way to go, Alyssa. So let me see. Nicole says walking 3 miles daily while listening to Afro beats and lifting weights. That is awesome. Thank you so much, Nicole. I'm actually working up. I'm like at a little less than a mile whenever I'm doing my walks, but that's super awesome. So I'm working up to that. So you are an inspiration. Thank you. Shannon says praying each day. That is actually a part of my self-care also. So that is great. Sorry, I'm going to butcher your name. Aveen says, I teach laughter yoga. It is awesome. I've never heard of that. Dr. Barnes, you ever heard of laughter yoga?
Laughter yoga, I haven't. I would love to know more.
That is awesome. Laughter yoga is up there with the baby goat yoga. I'm going to have to try both of those. That is super cool. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Let me see. And then Martina says, pray. Let my puppies out, feed them, and pray while driving to work. Just did dawn prayers. Happens every Friday this morning. These trainings remind me of self-care and healing. Awesome. That is so cool. Thank you for sharing that. Sarah said, I added a Taekwondo class after I teach yoga. As a yoga therapist, I have a lot of yoga and meditation in my life. It was delightful to discover the powerful, life-changing action of Taekwondo at the age of 48. That is so awesome. Thank you, Sarah. I really appreciate that. That is inspiring. I like that. My uncle did Taekwondo. Christina says, I'm exercising, walking 3 miles almost daily. I would like to add in some yard work or gardening because having a nice place to relax at home outside is helpful for my overall well-being. Yeah, you're totally right? Having that nice place can kind of help calm your nervous system. And Dr. Barnes probably knows a little bit more about that, right? Just your area and your environment affecting your kind of your mind and everything. Do you have any thoughts on that, Dr. Barnes?
Yeah, I always go back to the motto, as within, so without. So if your external environment is chaotic, your internal environment is more likely to be chaotic as well. So for nervous system, yeah, it's really important to be able to structure the environment around you to be as calm as possible.
Awesome. So Will Marie says she crafts and would like to add exercise. We talked about crafting in the mindfulness part also, Dr. Barnes was talking about. So that's super awesome. Thank you, Will Marie. Aveen says, you can watch my TED Talk about laughter yoga. Just look up Aveen Ryan Martin. I'm definitely going to do that. I'm going to take a picture of that chat because I'm going to check out your TED Talk. Thank you so much, Aveen. I really appreciate that. No problem, Serena. It happens with the power. Thank you for coming back up. Jim, do you have any thoughts on self-care and anything that you do that works for you?
I do. And actually, I wanted to say that this very subject is the whole reason this webinar series came about, I think. I participate in a monthly talking circle. It's also here on APTC, and I listen to people, and I've heard a lot of stress and sometimes almost grief, it sounds like, from having to work in a clinical system that's not really designed for our well-being. And some months back, actually, we lost a person in our local community, a longtime sober therapist who was a very traditionally minded person, had no outlet for whatever he was experiencing, and he took his own life. And I became really aware of the urgency of this. And I too have, I've worked in a state of burnout for extended periods of time. And the last time that happened, I made a decision I was never going to experience that again. And so I reached out to Steve, and then I've been, paying attention to what Abraham's been doing for a while. And I thought that this would be a good thing for our people that are doing work to help our people. And so, but a little bit about how my morning is gone. I actually slept in a little bit this morning because I was going to be home instead of going into the office. And but my alarm went off, which is my phone. And immediately there's an email from a tribal member who was needing to talk. And also a message from another tribal member who I've been trying to help facilitate and get into treatment. And I get that sense of urgency. I got to get up now. I got to get up now and get going. But I intentionally, like you said, Abraham, I went in and took my shower and offered some tobacco and said that speech that I said at the beginning here, and had some water. I always start my day off with water instead of coffee, and then I have my coffee. I got to have my coffee. But I called the one tribal member. It's about making travel arrangements for our culture camp that we have coming up. And then facilitated a conversation between the other tribal member and a person that's helping him get into treatment. And so I've had a very busy morning. Oh, also I had a call from, I do contract work for another tribe. And I had a call from one of their clients who is not having a good time. So I had to facilitate some in-person support for him as well. So I've had that kind of morning. But what I'm saying is it all goes back to the way I started my morning, with not buying into that frantic feeling. And I think, Thich Nhat Hanh said that when we hurry, our footsteps imprint violence on the earth. And hurrying is not an indigenous way. The only time we ever hurried is maybe if we were under attack or something like that and we had to hurry. But other times we moved with purpose and thought with purpose and lived with purpose and intention. And so for me, that is the most vital, I think, cultural practice that I've implemented in my own life. And because I too have to navigate these systems that we pretty much, tribal systems seem more colonized than colonized systems, actually, sometimes. And my boss was complaining about how slow the tribal council moves. And I said, well, guess who we learned it from? We learned bureaucracy from the BIA, and we refined it to an art, and so all this stuff is what we learned. And I've had to, I've been called a rebel because I won't hurry, and I won't buy into that, but when I do that way, I can actually get a lot done in a day and not be tired. And that's how I feel today. I feel good about what's happened so far this morning. And I'll just close with, I always talk about bringing our culture into our work. And doing that to me doesn't mean going back to the past. It means bringing these values that Abraham and Dr. Barnes are showing us, bringing these values into our current lives and places that we have to be in. So I just want to share that. Yahweh.
Well, Jim, I really appreciate that. I know exactly what you're talking about. In our society, we feel pressure to walk fast, talk fast, think fast. We need to be more and more productive. Dr. Barnes said, our society is not set up for our wellness. It is set up for people to make money, right? And the worse we feel, actually the more money people are making, because they're going to sell you the stuff you need to feel better, right? They're going to sell you energy drinks because you're lazy and you need to get up. They're going to sell you the pills you need for this and for that. And you know what I mean? They're going to sell you the new phone because, you know, you feel incomplete without it. The new truck, the new shoes, the new everything, right? That's where our gratitude comes in. If we're just grateful for what we have, there'd be a lot of things that went unbought, right? And so we actually have that power. Dr. Barnes talks about it all the time. Jim talks about it. We can take that power back, you know, and the better we take care of ourselves, definitely. So the last thing I appreciate everybody. Thank you for sharing your self-care practices. I'm going to share this last thing, this document really quick. So everybody's self-care is going to look different, right? This is what my daily self-care kind of looks like. And it just takes, like I said, I do this entire program in less than 45 minutes a day. That includes my 30 minutes of exercise. I say a quick prayer in the morning. Thank you for the Creator another day. Do my gratitude list in the shower. I got to be in there anyway, right? I set an intention for my day when I'm braiding my hair, usually two things. Today, I wanted to be grateful and I wanted to be present, right? Because I've had anxiety my whole life. So I have a tendency to be forward thinking a lot. I want to be present today. I do my 30 minutes of exercise. I'll take a walk on my breaks. If I can't do 30 minutes, like I said, I'll do 5, I'll do 7, whatever. Something's better than nothing. I do a 1-minute check-in at lunch. Takes 1 minute. Close my eyes, do some deep breaths, and I check in with my feelings. I suppressed my feelings for so long, I can't even recognize them anymore. If you ask me how I feel, it actually takes me a minute. I have to think about it for a little bit. So that helps me just reconnect with my feelings every day. After I have my feelings, I share them. I talk to at least one person a day, even if it's just 1 minute. How I'm feeling, how are you doing? You know, to get into that practice. We do a gratitude list before dinner. We all share one thing we're grateful for. I try to eat half my plate vegetables for dinner. I tell one person a day I'm grateful for them to share that gratitude. I do a what went well list when I'm brushing my teeth. I have followed through on my doctor's appointments. I go to therapy and I go to ceremony. Not every day, but those things are more like weekly self-care activities. So these things do not take a lot of time. I know we say all the time, I don't have time for wellness. I don't have time for this, right? We got kids, we got all work, all this stuff. We really do have time. Prayer takes 30 seconds. My gratitude list, 30 seconds. Intention for the day, 30 seconds. We're not asking for a lot of time, guys, and so I don't mean to be preaching at you. I'm just saying you guys are awesome. You guys do so much for so many people. I know we feel guilty though, when we try to, take that time for self-care. Not to put Dr. Barnes on blast, but her and I have been going through this lately. It's uncomfortable asking for maybe an accommodation or asking for some understanding or any of this. You know what that makes you? Makes you human. It makes you responsible for your own wellness. I applaud you guys for taking these healthy risks. You guys are awesome. And so with that, I'm going to keep it moving here. So we're going to move on to the next topic. As I'm pulling up the screen, Dr. Barnes, do you have any last thoughts on self-care at all?
I think I just want to reiterate that a lot of self-care is just giving yourself permission to do it, because you're most likely going to have to set some boundaries, whether that be with other people or with work, whatever it is, to be able to properly engage in self-care, at least if it's, temporarily. And that means you have to see yourself as worthy enough to set those boundaries and really give yourself permission to do it. Because like Abraham was saying, a lot of implementing it really isn't that difficult, especially if you start small and do things in little chunks. It's not that hard to do, but what is hard and what gets in our way a lot is we think, I don't have time for this. And so we make it out to be a lot harder than it is, or I'm a piece of crap anyway, so I'm not really worth taking care of, right? Or I don't want someone to think I'm lazy, or I just only care about myself, right? Or ask them for, some time off, things of that nature. I don't want this person to get mad at me. All of those things that go into our head that are, ways that we talk ourselves out of doing it. So whatever comes up for you when you think about implementing self-care strategies and you feel some sort of resistance, whatever comes up for you, sit with that and reflect on what is that narrative that your mind is telling you as to why you can't do this, and write that. That'd be a really good journaling topic, actually. to write that down and say, what are those belief systems that are getting in my way of giving myself permission to do this?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Barnes. That's a great point. And it's actually society, right? In American society, if you're not working, you are a piece of trash. You know what I mean? And it really makes us feel pressured. I'm not a good person if I sit down for a little bit or if I take a day off and I rest. I was on the personnel committee at my last job. And, you know, if you did not take your vacation, they would pay you out at the end of the year. What we found, nobody took their vacation. Nobody was taking any of their time off. And so eventually my employer said, well, we're going to quit offering it. Why offer vacation time to people if they're not going to take it? It's because they're trying to meet those unrealistic financial obligations sometimes we set for ourselves, right? We would rather work sick, work tired, work exhausted. So like Dr. Barnes, that's a great point. So yes, just that narrative, you know, changing that self-talk, right? Giving ourselves permission to rest. And so in Cherokee culture, we understand rest is just as important as work. So boom, moving on. We finally got through self-care. But we're moving on to sobriety. So we aspire to practice active sobriety in order to live a vibrant and fulfilling life. So I know you guys all do a lot of work with this, but there's a reason why Cherokee ceremonial grounds forbid alcohol on the premises. You know, when we put these substances into our body, like alcohol or drugs, it numbs our senses and creates a barrier to spiritual connection. You know, and I know that there is a lot of pressure in our society. You know, that coping skill, that after work beer or after work, whatever, right? You know, these substances and these, you know, harmful patterns that we have, not even with drugs or alcohol. Maybe it's gambling. Maybe it's relationships. Maybe it's sex, right? You know, and so we can take a look at these things and see what is and what is no longer working for us. I know that a lot of our people have endured trauma and have been in survival mode for so long. That's just, you just think that's your life, right? But we don't have to always live that way. And that kind of stress, it's really taken a toll on our physical health, right? So, you know, and when working with our clients, you know, we help them to understand, right? There's a difference between just not using and practicing active sobriety, right? Because if you're a jerk and, you know, you're abusing alcohol, you take away the alcohol, what? You're still a jerk, right? You know, and so I had to work on actually my behaviors and my self-talk and my gratitude. And that's actually what We're Walking with Balance was born out of, was because, you know, I was newly sober and, you know, I went to AA, and that's why the Walking in Balance program, it's meant to be a supplement to any program you're already working. It's not meant to be in place of therapy or anything like that, but it can be a supplement, because I wanted a total program for living that was easy, that was able to be adapted to any culture. And so that's where Walking in Balance comes from. And I'm practicing it every day, and I'm coming up on 11 years sober. Yay me. And I've changed a lot of my behaviors, changed a lot of my coping skills, and I'm able to be present more, and definitely very happy. In saying this, these are some things that continue to help me in my sobriety journey, right? You know, because I know my disease is just out there waiting for me to slip up, to think I got it, right? And so, but you know, the Walking in Balance program, it's not just for those in sobriety. It's really for anybody experiencing overstress, anxiety, any of these things. Can help you to, you know, just to cope and have your life be more manageable and ultimately more enjoyable. So the supporting science behind sobriety, Dr. Barnes, would you like to share that?
Yeah, I think at this point, the medical and mental health fields are pretty sold on the fact that harmful substance use is not great for us, both on individual and collective level. We're pretty solid on that. The DSM, which most of you I'm sure know what that is, but just in case, it's the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. It is full of mental health problems that can be or are brought on by substance use. We know that alcohol and many other harmful substances can severely damage our major organs. It leads to several kinds of cancer, weakens our immune system. And we also know that getting sober, or at least, you know, reducing the amount of usage as much as possible, helps reduce the toxicity in our bodies and puts us into a place where our organs can start to heal. They also decrease, those substances also decrease our quality of sleep, leads to chronic fatigue, can cause premature aging, or cause or exacerbate many mental health issues. So even though we know all of this, and we've known this for a long time, many people in our society, even those who work in healthcare, find it very, very difficult to remove harmful substances from our lifestyle. And I think that is because we live in a very chaotic and stressful society that literally promotes substance use at almost every corner in some way. So if that is you, please do not shame yourself, because there is a lot working against you on this subject. Just like Abraham was talking about, he put that beautifully, that society, the people that make money off of this, right, they benefit from our stress. They benefit from us being unable to cope with life, because what are we going to do? We're going to go buy something or engage in some sort of service or whatever, spend some sort of money on ways to cope. And then that, keeps the whole system going. So if you want to be able to move toward wellness, though, you will need both the physical and the mental health that comes from treating your body with respect and not feeding it substances that are toxic or engaging in any other toxic behaviors. It's also important to acknowledge, like Abraham talked about, alcohol and other commonly known drugs are not the only things that we can be addicted to. We can be addicted to pretty much anything. The definition for addiction that I like to use is just a maladaptive pattern of use. So whatever you're using, whether it be behavior, substance, whatever, you're using in a way that is maladaptive to you, right? So you can be addicted to unhealthy food and drinks. I think that's probably true for most people at this point, unfortunately, because our food industry is saturated with really horrible things that are addictive. Gambling, shopping, pornography, even many eating disorders are based in the addiction to the binge and restrict or purge cycle. So addiction is everywhere. It is very understandable that we would be desperately seeking out ways to cope with living in our traumatic and toxic world, but avoiding our negative emotions with addictions will never allow us to heal and will cause more problems for us in the long run. So that being said, remember, though, I'm going to say this a million times, shame is not a good motivator, and addiction patterns are often passed down generationally. So what you're dealing with is most likely something that did not start with you, and breaking that pattern is really, really hard to do. Totally possible and also difficult. So we are up against so much personal and generational trauma in a system that really wants to just make money off of providing you ways of numbing your pain. So to take your power back from that system and break those cycles, we really do have to sit and have a hard conversation with ourselves and examine our relationships with substances or other behavioral patterns and ask yourself, are they really serving you or not? And that's a tricky question, because obviously there are going to be some ways in which they seem to be serving you, right? But if you take an inventory of how it's impacting different areas of your life, you'll be able to see a clearer picture of if it's really benefiting you more than it's harming you. So if you're interested in starting a recovery journey, and you don't really know where to start, I've also included a link in the workbook to a helpful guide from the American Addiction Centers. So the question, if you want to scroll down a little bit, Abraham, the question that we have for this topic is, what is one thing that you have a maladaptive or harmful pattern of use with that you would like to change?
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I was wondering what was making that noise. It's actually the time clock here in the office. But anyway, yeah, you're totally right, Dr. Barnes, and so one thing I have a maladaptive pattern of use with, it's, for me, I'm still working on food. So I happen to live in a culture and in Oklahoma, and our food, it's usually fried. We can fry anything, and they fry anything they can. Your food, anytime you eat out, it comes with a ton of salt. And so, for me, just making sure that I'm creating a schedule to where I'm not forced to eat out, right? And so, there are things that I can do to make sure I have this better relationship with my food. I was told before, my doctor said, stick to the outside of the grocery store, right? That's where you're going to find, the fresh fruits and vegetables, things like that. Also, emotional eating. In my house, certain people, I'm not going to put them on blast, but my spouse, she likes sugar. And if I see these things on the counter and I'm stressed, I'm this or I'm that, I'm eating cupcake, man. You know what I mean? I'm getting some ice cream. And so, but that's okay. It happens. And it's good to enjoy some junk food every now and then. With the Walking in Balance program, we believe all things in moderation, including moderation, right? So sometimes it is good to have, these comfort foods and everything, but on a daily basis, I just need to be more mindful about my food. So, Dr. Barnes, how about you? Is there anything that you're continuing to work on, in your life, in your program?
Yeah, what mine is behavioral pattern. People pleasing is something I'm very addicted to because I think more I'm addicted to preventing conflict, potential conflict, in a way that does not serve me. So.
I totally hear you on that. I am in recovery from people pleasing as well. So thank you so much. I really appreciate that. So we're going to hit the chat really quick. So what are some things you guys are working on? And Dr. Barnes, Elizabeth wants to know, can you share again, your definition of maladaptive, and these maladaptive patterns of use? Could you share just a little more on that?
Yeah, or is she referring to my the way I define addiction, maladaptive pattern of use?
Yeah, can you just repeat that definition she said?
Yeah, that's the way that I know there's lots of different definitions of addiction. I've seen a lot of them throughout the years, but the one that I resonate with the most is a maladaptive pattern of use. So basically using something in a way that is harmful to you. It makes it a very broad definition because addiction is a very broad thing and you can be addicted to a lot of things that are not helpful to you. And
for example, work, right? In our society, in our culture, we're taught if you are if you are addicted to your work, you are a good person. And if you drop dead at 42 from a heart attack because all you did was work, that's not really something we ever address. You know what I mean? We're just like, yep, he was a good guy, but we're trying to change those definitions, right? And so, but thank you so much for that, Dr. Barnes. I appreciate it. Thank you, Jim, for sharing that piece on the chat about drugs, and why we're using them, right? To feel better. So Eric said he's working on spending too much time shopping. I hear you. That is definitely addicting, right? You know what I mean? Buying that thing, that dopamine, right? Whenever you're purchasing that, can definitely help you to feel better. Christina said it depends, but food also, or spending money. Yes. And then that's another harmful pattern because we spend our money to feel better and then we got to go work to make more money, right? And we're just kind of on the hamster wheel going around and around, and so I definitely hear you. So Elizabeth said, sugar is my heroin. I hear you. I totally, and we're bombarded with that from when we're little kids, and so, and unfortunately, this tends to affect poor people or lower income people a lot more because I remember when I was young, a lot of our reward was food. My mom couldn't buy us video games. She couldn't buy us any of that other stuff because my mom was in addiction, right? And she was in and out of employment, but she had food stamps. And so our reward was, or a cheeseburger, a cheap cheeseburger from McDonald's, a Happy Meal, right? But she would reward us with cupcakes, with these sugary things, just trying to make us feel better. And so we learned from an early age to associate that with sugar, right? That's a reward. And so, but like I said, unfortunately, our lower income population is going to be affected by that more because they do tend to look at food as a reward and have it be part of that pleasure cycle more than higher income people. So, Louise says watching too much TV. I hear you. I like to watch my shows. You know what I mean? I just finished up Yellow Jackets. That was crazy. That's a good show. But yes, watching too much, like Dr. Barnes talking about, maladaptive, right? So we can watch TV, but definitely just limiting it. Tracy said sleep, using it to avoid, not think, not feel. Yes, I hear you. And you know what, you guys? Make sure when we're talking about these things, we have these maladaptive patterns of use with, we're not shaming ourselves. We're not being hard on ourselves. Because do you guys know why you're doing these things? Why I'm doing this? I'm exhausted, bro. They're working me, you know what I mean? They're working me like crazy. And so you guys are doing awesome. You guys are just exhausted. And so I was finally able to see there's a difference between rest and exhaustion. I thought I was resting, right? I got my TV on. I'm watching Everybody Loves Raymond. I'm chilling, but I can't move. You know, my wife needs something in the other room, and I'm like, I'm exhausted. There's a difference between rest and exhaustion. So if we could actively rest instead of falling over and not being able to move because we're overworked, right? So anyway, sorry, I wanted to share that. Well, Marie says sugar. Yes, I hear you. Serena says, been in recovery the last 4 years and substituted fitness and nutrition in the beginning as my new addiction. Although it became unhealthy, I'm at a better place of learning to find the balance of living a good life in cultural wellness and spirituality. Yes, you know, and the key word there, Serena, balance. Exactly. And so I'm very happy for you and congratulations on your sobriety. Jim said, addicted to a false sense of power through identity. I totally hear you on that. And so that just, you know, goes to Dr. Barnes's point, and that it's not just alcohol or drugs, right? You know, there are so many other things that could be harming us. Tammy says, taking classes, they provide a socially acceptable excuse to not think, feel, or handle a situation, that maladapter pattern, right? And then Steve says, sitting is the new smoking. Yes, I totally hear you. You know, right? And so we are making progress with that, right? We're using our machines to tell us to get up and to move around and, you know, taking a walk. I love that. That's a really great coping skill for me. So, Dr. Barnes, before we jam out of here, do you have any closing thoughts on this topic?
Yeah, I think honestly, a big part of it is with the shame piece. Please keep in mind as you are examining the things that you have maybe a maladaptive relationship with, that some people aren't prone to this, but I've noticed a lot of people are, especially those that have substance use issues, are prone to shame. And so it can be really hard sometimes to look at what your behavior has done to yourself or done to your relationships, other parts of your life, right? And that can bring up the inner critic that's going to come up and go, look how horrible you've been. Look what you've done to yourself, all that stuff, right? And that's where you want to just grab the inner critic for a second and go, hey, let's look at my context. Is this a generational pattern? What was going on? Like Abraham was talking about, what was going on for me that led for me to do that? See your behavior in context and give yourself compassion for doing what you had to do to survive, and then be able to go, all right, and now I want to be done with that. So how can I start to create a program for myself to get away from it? Shaming yourself for what has already happened will never, ever, ever help you make progress. Never.
Yes, you're right. And so, but that is a symptom, you know, kind of a tool in American society. We think of it as a motivator, but Dr. Barnes says all the time, shame is not a helpful motivator. But, you know, we all this self-critical voice, it comes from our society, American society, namely not putting them on blast or anything, but gym teachers. Have you ever met a gym teacher or a coach that, you know, all my coaches call us scumbags, you know what I mean? Just sorry pieces of stuff, you know what I mean? And they would think, hey, man, I'm just building all these really young men. They were just hurting us like a lot. And so we get these voices in our head, and then we turn around and we think we're motivating ourselves. We call ourselves fat, lazy, ugly, all these things, right? And it's not helping us. And now studies have actually been able to prove this, that shame is not a helpful motivator. There was actually a study recently done, 50 women trying to lose weight. The women that were hard on themselves and shamed themselves didn't do as well as the group that were like, whatever, I'm gonna try, you know? And we're actually, you know, just okay with themselves, or, you know, showed more self-compassion. They actually lost more weight and were more successful in their program. So shame, yes. So we are going to move on to the next topic. And thank you guys. I just want to say thank you all so much for sharing in the chat. I really appreciate it. It helps me so much hearing from you guys. And when we can share coping skills, we can share some of the things we're working through. That's healing. It really is. And it's really powerful. So I just want to say thank you guys a lot for taking that healthy risk. I appreciate it. Next, we're going to talk about respect. So we aspire to always show respect to ourselves, others, and the environment. So Cherokee people place a high value on respect, and Native people were actually known for respect for the environment. This may be before some of your guys' time, but they used to show this Indian, you know what I mean? A picture of what they said was an Indian on TV, right? One tear, crying because people were littering, right? You know what I mean? And so that's kind of a stereotype about natives, which is a cool stereotype to have, right? We respect nature, and which is true. We've always been able to live in balance with our environment. Another stereotype or thing we're known for is respect for our elders. And that's really awesome. That is a great thing to be known for. The lesser known one, I feel like, is respect for ourselves. Maybe the one that in our cultural teachings, because we've become disconnected from our cultural teachings, we lost that, we became disconnected from that cultural teaching that says we need to treat ourselves with respect too. We deserve to treat ourselves with respect, right? That's when that self-critical voice comes in, that shame and everything. So as we return to our cultural teachings, we can become healthier and respect ourselves once again, right? So I like this quote by Malcolm S. Forbes that says, too many people overvalue what they are not and undervalue what they are, right? And social media has been horrible, for us in being able to sustain, maintain, or improve our level of self-respect, because we feel like we are comparing ourselves all the time, right? You know what I mean? And so what we're doing is comparing our worst against someone else's best, right? You're on social media and you're like, look at Tammy, look how clean her kids are. You turn around and look at your kids, they're jumping off the couch, you know what I mean? Trying to kill each other. And so, that we can just feel bad about ourselves all the time. And there are actually people sitting around in rooms right now trying to come up with ways to make you feel bad about yourself so that you buy their product, right? So it's intentional, it's on purpose. But how we get our self-respect back, for me, first, I had to determine what my values were. So a big part of, me being able to respect myself is if I'm living in accordance with my values. But I don't know about you guys, but we did not have a family crest with our values all, written on the wall there. So I had to determine those for myself. I had to actually write them down. Once I wrote them down, I found that I actually was not living within my values. For instance, I value family. I think it is super important, and so it actually makes me feel like a good person. I have a high level of self-respect when I feel like I am fulfilling those familial obligations, right? I feel connected. But I work 60 hours a week. So that's at odds with my value that I value family, right? But I do understand you have to pay the bills. But when you have those two competing values, or say you don't value money, you value family, but you're actually chasing money and working all the time, that's going to lower your self-respect. You're going to have a lower opinion of yourself. And so that's, I was surprised once I wrote down my values and I saw, hey, I value my health, but I actually never do anything for my self-care. And so, if we're not living, in accordance with our values, that's actually going to, we're going to lose respect for ourselves. So changing negative thoughts, definitely improving positive self-care, telling yourself every day you're amazing, you're beautiful, you're strong, you're handsome, you're smart. We need to hear that stuff every day. Spending time with respectful people. I've been around people who it's just, man, negativity, right? And that's okay. Everybody's journey is different for a reason. But if we're not heading in the same direction, we're not on, the same path, I got to limit my time with you, bro. You know what I mean? I love you. I'm going to pray for you, but I just can't be surrounded with negativity. It actually affects me a lot, right? And it actually makes me feel really bad when I'm surrounded by negativity. So until they're ready to heal, I'll just limit my time with them. I can establish that healthy emotional boundary. Look at me, got boundaries, right? Rock on. So treating others how they want to be treated, treating animals and the environment with respect. All of this can improve, your self-respect, help you to respect others and the environment. So to share the science behind respect, Dr. Barnes, would you like to share that?
Yeah, so moving from imbalance to balance takes a lot of effort and dedication, obviously. So it's really important. I'm just going to reiterate this again. that you respect yourself enough to put in the work and see yourself as worthy enough to make those changes. Because if you do not have self-respect, you're probably not very likely to actually try to help yourself, right? Or to put in the, because to move from a lifestyle that causes a lot of harm and to change, I mean, it is kind of over time a lifestyle overhaul, right? To do that, you have to really see yourself as worth showing up for. So developing self-respect involves identifying your strengths and being proud of yourself for them, as well as identifying your areas for growth, previously called weaknesses, and having self-compassion for them. It also means being able to forgive yourself for making mistakes and accepting your flaws. So keep in mind, though, that acceptance does not mean being complacent about your areas for growth and no longer working to improve them. A lot of people are resistant of the idea of acceptance because, like, well, I just have to accept that, this negative thing about me or whatever. No, I mean, you want to accept that that is, where you're at right now and how you got there, and have compassion for that and understanding, and also say, what would I like to do to help improve this, right? So it's accepting of what is right now and with grace and compassion, and also working towards making changes. That's actually a big part of dialectical behavior therapy, is accepting where you are now and also continuing to make progress. So it means understanding how you got to where you are right now, like I said, right? And being able to really make peace with that. And that's hard for a lot of people to do. That requires really seeing your context. That's where I see a lot of people that I work with in therapy struggle with self-respect. Is being able to, sometimes it's maybe a little easier to see how they got to where they are, but to be able to really accept that, this has led to these consequences for them, to accept the things that have already happened because of this is very, very difficult, and it takes time. So the more that you can do that, the more that you will free yourself up to be able to work towards growth. So self-respect obviously also involves treating your mind and your body as well as possible, and trying to take in what nourishes you instead of what's toxic to you, as well as, like Abraham mentioned, standing up for yourself and being able to set boundaries with others. A lot of people struggle with setting boundaries. A lot of that is because of people pleasing, right? So you also want to respect yourself, because respecting yourself helps increase your capacity to respect other people. Like I talked about before, right? As within, so without. When we develop that self-respect, we also start to see that it's easy for us to apply that understanding and that compassion to others as well. Sometimes it can also work the other way, right? Respecting others can also sometimes help you respect yourself. Not always, though. Sometimes we have more grace and compassion for other people than we have for ourselves. So, and like Abraham talked about, it's really important that when you respect other people, you treat them how they want to be treated, right? The golden rule is that we treat others the way we want to be treated. That's a good start. But we also need to understand how they want to be treated, because it might be different than how we want to be treated. And really be able to respect their opinions and practices, even when they differ from yours, which I think our society right now is pretty bad at. Hopefully we'll improve on that over the next few years. But it's like he talked about, it's not only other humans that we need to respect to have a healthy society. It's also really, really, really important to respect our planet, because, as of right now, this is the only planet that we have to live on, and it provides everything for us. So it's really important that we try to keep it clean and respect it as much as possible, and respecting the other life on the planet. So, for example, the horrific mistreatment of animals has clearly backfired on us, given that many of the conventionally raised animal products have actually turned out to be carcinogens and harmful to our digestion and our liver, hormone regulation, and more. So remember that if our environment is unwell, we will be unwell. So how we treat other things in our environment has a direct and indirect impact on how we treat ourselves and our health. So practicing respect involves being able to identify and act according to your values, which is actually a major component of what's called acceptance and commitment therapy, or ACT. ACT is an evidence-based therapeutic modality that helps with things like anxiety and stress and depression, substance disorders, chronic pain, eating disorders, OCD, psychosis, and more. There's been a lot of research on ACT since the past couple of decades. If you're interested in learning more about ACT, I highly recommend doing that, because it is very aligned with the principles that we discuss in Walk in Balance, not just on this topic, but on a lot of other topics. One of the main parts of ACT is mindfulness. So you'll definitely get a lot of benefit out of that section for sure. But the founder of ACT, Stephen Hayes, has written several books. And so for those of you who love reading, I actually have a few of them here. I was going to show you one of them. If you really like books and you have the attention span for it, I would suggest reading A Liberated Mind, The Essential Guide to ACT. Is super, super helpful. And if you don't have that attention span or time or whatever, another one is a workbook called Get Out of Your Mind and Get Into Your Life. It's a little bit older, but I have found it to still be really, really helpful, especially with managing anxiety and being able to kind of turn and face the dragon and whatnot. But a big part of ACT, like we talk about, is being able to understand what your values are. And once you understand what your values are, you can kind of then go through and say, how is my behavior lining up with this? Am I choosing to respect myself and others by acting in accordance to my values within my integrity? Our question that we have, Abraham, if you want to scroll down for this subject, is what is one of your main strengths that you can show respect for yourself for?
Thank you so much, Dr. Barnes. And yes, I will scroll down here to the question. Before we get to the question, Dr. Barnes, we had a question in the chat about compassion fatigue. So it says, is compassion fatigue disrespecting our profession? So do you have any thoughts on that and on compassion fatigue, at all? And that's actually with walking in balance, right? What we're trying to address, wellness for ourselves first, and then wellness for our clients. Sorry, I cut you off. But yeah, any thoughts on compassion fatigue?
Well, I have lots of thoughts of compassion fatigue in general, especially as it relates to, mental health. Typically, that's what I have the most experience with, but healthcare in general. But I related to that question, what was the end of it? Is it disrespectful to our field?
Yeah, to our profession. Is compassion fatigue disrespectful to our compassion or to our profession? Is compassion fatigue disrespecting our profession?
That's an interesting question. Like the topic of compassion fatigue, I think I would guess.
I think what the question is, and maybe you can, and if you can want to elaborate in the chat. So, with compassion fatigue, right? Eric, if you want to elaborate or let us know if we're not answering this. But compassion fatigue, right? We're exhausted. We care so much, and it's just, I understand how you can feel bad for experiencing, right? Compassion fatigue and may feel like, hey, I'm a therapist. I'm supposed to, this is my job, right? And then you experience compassion fatigue and you may feel like you're disrespecting your profession, right? By having to, experience compassion fatigue, but it is a real thing, right? Burnout and compassion fatigue, in our line of work, in your line of work, everybody is really, extremely susceptible to that. So have you had any experience with that at all, Dr. Barnes?
Yeah, the way that I see compassion fatigue is, if you think about being in a human body is like being in a video game, right? Just use this metaphor, for example, for a minute. So you have in a video game, when you're in your character, right? You have like the health bar, stamina, like all the different things on the side that kind of tell you how your character's doing, right? When you get so exhausted with a million different things, with the administrative side of being in healthcare, with having to work with other humans and their trauma so much, just the other things of life, when you get so exhausted that your energy levels and your ability to focus and attend to other people gets so low, at that point you enter into survival mode. And so at that point, like what is best for you in that moment, your body is saying, you got to focus on you. Your cup is empty, right? And if your cup is empty, you cannot give to other people. You're not supposed to, because you have to make sure that you're okay first, right? So what compassion fatigue, it does not mean I no longer care about other people. I no longer want to help other people. That's not how I see it. I see it as I'm so drained. My cup is so empty that like I have to be able to put myself first and focus on myself before I can ethically give to other people, right? But I do see where it can feel really bad in those moments to feel like, oh, I'm just, a bad, cold person because I feel like that part of me, that empathy or whatever, is cut off a little bit, but it's probably because you're in a state of survival and your body is trying to tell you, hey, you got to take care of yourself first before you can continue to do that for others.
That's a great explanation. I love that energy bar. Yeah, you're totally right. I've been down there a time or two. My energy bar, my power bar has been really down, right? And so thank you so much for explaining that, Dr. Barnes. I really appreciate that. And that really connects with what the question is that Dr. Barnes wanted to talk about, which is what are our strengths, right? and improving our self-respect, being able to focus on what we're good at, right? And so what are some of your strengths? What are, something that you're really proud of yourself, you're really happy about, what are you good at? So for me, Dr. Barnes actually pointed this one out to me before. I'm good at, bringing positivity to others. You know what I mean? By helping others, by motivating. I just think that's actually my spiritual calling. I think we have enough negativity, anger in the world. I want to, a friend of mine, she said, actually, she shared a quote, which says that people won't always remember what you do, but they will remember how you make them feel, right? And so I want to leave, a good feeling with everybody, because you guys are all trying so hard. You're doing amazing things. You're breaking cycles. You're raising kids in a society that's out of balance. You're trying to reclaim your language, reclaim culture. You're trying to help other people. That's a lot. And so, that's really awesome. And I just commend you guys. And I love being that positive person in people's lives. So, Dr. Barnes, what is one of your strengths?
I think probably one of my top ones is being very perseverant, which we will talk about next week. But yeah, just being able to keep going, giving myself rest now, we're adding that in, but being able to continue on the path, despite difficulties.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Jim, do you have any thoughts on this? Somebody said in the chat that your hand was up. Sorry, I can't see nobody's face.
Oh, that's okay. First of all, with the topic of compassion fatigue, my thoughts are, first of all, I want to use a word that we have in Gakono is Ganokwa. And most people will use it as to say, I love you, but really what it means is to care deeply, or I care deeply. And I don't want to generalize, but I'm willing to bet that most of us on this call have this gift called empathy. And sometimes we care so deeply, it hurts. And that to me leads to compassion fatigue if I don't know how to balance that and put up some boundaries. And I don't mean walls, boundaries to me can be, a while back I had a peer who and they didn't mean to be this way, but they were just kind of like sucked the life out of me, right? Every time I would get with them, that energy that they put out would just suck the life out of me. And I kind of had to back off. But in our field, we I'm going to have to disagree. I don't believe that is disrespecting the people that we serve. I think disrespecting the people that I serve is trying to still serve them when I have nothing to give, right? And so I kind of had to back off, but we're always, once again, I gotta use I statements. I'm afraid of how I'm going to be perceived, what people think about me. Then I have my own roles that I'm Jim the healer, I'm Jim this, I'm Jim that. No, I'm Jim that's a human being that probably needs to step back and refill the glass. And then we have other professional things, client abandonment. We hear that a lot sometimes in our field. And sometimes I've been led to believe that stepping back sometimes is client abandonment. And I personally don't believe that. Once again, I have to step back, and that's what I let this person know that I valued them, but I had to step back from giving them services until I could get to more a place of being more centered myself. So, I'm just going to have to say, I really believe that compassion fatigue comes from a place unconsciously most of the time of assigning myself these roles and these identities that I've been led to believe that I should have, rather than just realizing, as what John Trudell said, just another human being trying to get by in a world that's lost its sense of being human. Right? So I got to get back to that being part of human. And the only way I can do that sometimes is to step back. So, and that's both my strength and my curse sometimes. So anyway, too much time, sorry.
No, you're good. Thank you so much, Jim, sorry. I really appreciate that. And thank you so much, everybody who's commented on this. It is, definitely something worth talking about because it does affect, a lot of people. We are highly susceptible to this. I have heard, about caring too much a lot, it is a real thing. So, and so going back to what we were talking about, right? Our strengths. Thank you so much for everybody who also put those answers in the chat. So I see Eric said integrity. That is awesome. That's an awesome strength. Alyssa said intelligence. That is super cool. I really appreciate that. Thank you, Alyssa. Tracy said resilience. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. That is awesome. And so let me see. Mary says music, playing the piano, singing, empathy, and compassion for others. So those are great strengths. I really appreciate that. Louise says limit setting. What an awesome strength to have. I really like that. That's so cool. Aveen says it's very inspiring, validating, and motivating to discover your strengths. The VIA Strengths Assessment is free to take and should form an essential ingredient in self-care work. There's 24 strengths that we all have in varying levels, and some can be turned up a little too much, like kindness, so it's good to be aware of this. Awesome. Thank you, Aveen. I really appreciate that. Thank you for sharing that. Louise says humor. That's actually, a traditional coping skill in Native culture, right? So I really appreciate that. Thank you. Steve, how about you? What is one of your strengths?
I think for me, it's being able to stay open to not just helping others, but being helped by others. And sometimes that's counterintuitive, especially in this field where you're supposed to be the one with the answers and supposed to be the one that can make people feel better. And it just isn't always that way. So I think I always ask, in my prayers and meditation, I always ask to stay open to helping others, but just as much stay open to being helped by others. So that's thanks for asking, Abraham. Appreciate you.
Yeah, definitely, and thank you for sharing. That's a great point. In Native culture, in Cherokee culture, we're taught to ask for help. It's normal. It's actually how we get our needs met, right? In American culture, we are taught, no, you are not supposed to ask for help. You're supposed to be able to pull yourself up by the bootstraps and, make these things happen for yourself. But what I find is the people who are saying that a lot, they tend to be people who have everything, you know what I mean? And probably, they have great support systems and all of this. And so they don't have as much understanding, I feel like. And so in Cherokee culture, we're taught, I'm good at what I'm good at. Dr. Barnes is good at what she's good at. Jim's good at what he's good at. Alyssa's good at what she's good at. And Steve's good at what he's good at. And we all get to come together to make things happen and to help each other out. I'm not supposed to be good at, the language and the ceremonies and the songs and everything, right? The Creator gave me my particular talents. And that's what I should be, that's what I should really focus on. Instead of focusing on what I'm not, make sure that I'm focusing on what I am and these talents that the Creator gave me. So, and it's funny that I mentioned all those people because I have asked you all for help recently. So that's super funny. But that's, and that's what we got to teach our clients, right? And so, but what we find with Walking in Balance, the reason we're doing this training, it's hard to transmit something you haven't got. So we have to make our own wellness a priority. We have to know, if we know what the barriers are to our own wellness, we can then help our clients better break down their barriers to their own wellness, right? And so I find it a lot with my kids. They won't always do what I say. They will always do what I do, right? So I can talk to them all day long about respect. And then if I go and cuss at people in traffic, they're going to do what I do instead of doing what I say, right? So Lacey says, thank you for another great meeting. Thank you, Lacey. Steve says self-reliance. Mary says, oh yeah, thank you, Mary. Or they haven't experienced difficulties, right? So awesome. Thank you guys so much for your answers. I really appreciate that. This is going to bring us to our last component for today's training, and that is communication. So that's awesome. Just rolled right into it. So why are we able to communicate? Why do we have the ability to form words and sentences? It is actually, yes, to get our needs met, to communicate with one another, right? So we aspire to communicate effectively and practice active listening. So when I was growing up, I would go with my uncles, we'd go visit people. There was a ritual every time, same thing happened. We come in, they would speak in Cherokee, the TV gets turned off, put on coffee, the kids would get chased outside or they would have to sit and be quiet. And the elders would speak. They would always speak really slow, not how I'm speaking right now, right? They would speak really slow. They never spoke over each other. And everybody was really deliberate with their words. There was a lot of laughter and nobody talked over each other. Nobody was in a hurry. And so that's what I try to be mindful of when I'm communicating. It's not a contest. I don't have to one up you. And if what you're saying inspires a memory in me, I don't have to interrupt you to get my story out, right? Dr. Barnes pointed that out. Why that happens to me, my brain's overloaded. If I can't wait 30 seconds for you to be done with your story and be scared I'm going to forget mine, that means I'm overworking my brain a little bit, right? So all of these things are, can really inform how we're communicating. And so in our culture now, it's become more of like a competition. And so it'd be good. One thing I try to do is be more deliberate, more careful with my words, because they definitely do have power. So I try to communicate honestly. Every day, I try to talk about my feelings every single day. And if I can't, I'll journal just really quick. And doesn't take a lot of time. So it could be, Steve, how are you feeling today? And Steve says, actually, I'm kind of tired, and I'm kind of sad for this reason. Cool. Sharing these things every single day. It doesn't have to be a long, drawn out therapy session, but we're just being real, man. We're being real. We can stop the fake thing where, we say, hey, how you doing, Steve? Fine. You're supposed to say fine, right? We've gotten into that habit. I would like for us to be able to communicate our thoughts and feelings. And when we do that, I know that we're taking work away from construction workers who are, making good money patching up all the holes we're punching in walls everywhere we go because we're so fed up and so tired. And, but we cannot continue to go on this way in our society. Road rage is a thing. You know what I mean? It's like, people are just like on edge all the time. It just takes one thing to kind of set people off. And there's actually whole YouTube channels showing fights in fast food restaurants because people are just stressed. Look at Will Smith, went up there and slapped poor, Chris Rock. And that was just because he's overloaded, overwhelmed. He didn't have a good grasp of his feelings and emotions and to feel safe enough maybe to share some of those things. I don't know what was going on with Will Smith, but I do know about sharing our thoughts, feelings, and emotions definitely does help with that. When I'm communicating, I try to avoid assumptions. There's a stereotype about Native women, right? That they, their face sometimes says something different than their words do, right? But I try not to assume, you know what I mean? Because I've made that mistake before and I'm like, dang, I thought you were mean, and they're like the nicest person ever, but I'm assuming, how somebody is or what they're doing, but I try to practice active listening also. And then the last one, I would like for all of us to be the place where gossip goes to die. This is a huge problem in Indian country. We do not want to be crabs in the bucket. I talk about this in my book a lot. We want to support each other, celebrate each other. If somebody comes to me with gossip, I do not spread it on. I'll say something nice about that person. If you're not good with, feel comfortable with confrontation, right? You can just change the subject. You know what I mean? Just that way we're not, continuing to perpetuate this really harmful cycle in our offices, in our workplaces, in our tribal governments, in our places that should be places of healing, where sometimes can be backstabbing and gossiping. That's one thing I definitely would like to see if we could change. So with that, Dr. Barnes, would you like to share the supporting science behind communication?
Yeah. Humans by nature are actually social beings. Sometimes we forget that, even us introverts. And as we discussed in the wellness section, our social and relational health is a pretty crucial part of our overall well-being. Relational health actually has a really big tie to our mortality, so more than you would think. I think we learned that a little bit as we went through COVID, but being able to relate to other people well and have good connections with other people is very important to our overall health. So that really makes it necessary for us to learn how to communicate effectively with others in our community. So I'm sure as children, we all heard the saying, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words can never hurt me. And I think hopefully we've all now realized that that is wildly not true at all. Words definitely can hurt. I'm a massive Harry Potter fan, and one of my favorite quotes from Dumbledore is, "Words are, in my not so humble opinion, our most inexhaustible source of magic, capable of both inflicting injury and remedying it." You're welcome for that terrible British accent. But what he means is that our words can make others feel loved and cared for, or they can make other people feel rejected and disrespected. Words can also cause very significant psychological trauma. I just want to note that really quick, especially because of the audience that we have and that we're all working with. We're serving people as our career. As we go through measures for trauma, I've noticed a lot of them really emphasize physical and sexual trauma, which are obviously incredibly important to emphasize, but so is psychological trauma. So is verbal abuse, so is emotional abuse. Those things have just as big of an impact as other forms of trauma, but yet we overlook them because they seem very normal, right? Like whose parents didn't scream at them all the time, right? Just because it happens a lot doesn't mean it's not impactful. Words in our tone of voice, all that stuff are very impactful, to anybody, but especially on a developing child's mind for sure. So this means we need to be very careful and mindful of our words and how we're communicating, because they can have a really lasting impact on ourselves and others, for better or worse. So unfortunately, though, most humans are pretty bad at being careful with words, especially when we're emotionally activated. Poor communication is one of the main problems in relationships, and it leads to a lot of conflict and stress. And it's actually a major reason why people end up in marriage and family therapy, because it turns out that others, even your spouse, cannot read your mind. We haven't quite figured out telepathy yet, or maybe regained it yet, which means we need to be able to effectively ask for help to get our needs met and to interact with others in a way that hopefully is most likely to prevent conflict and misunderstanding as much as possible. So healthy communication is much harder than we realize, though. We initially learn how to communicate with others based on how our caregivers communicated with us or in front of us. So if we had really highly critical or verbally abusive caregivers, we might find those tendencies within ourselves as well, even if we only direct it at ourselves. So hello to that inner critic. It's probably how it got formed. So just like with breaking the patterns of addiction, though, we have to become aware of the ways in which our communication patterns are harmful and really intentionally start to practice different ways of communicating. So we also receive a lot, Abraham was talking about this a second ago, we receive a lot of societal and cultural messaging that tells us to not be reflective and open about our thoughts and emotions, especially for masculine embodied people. And many of us were taught or not taught how to regulate our emotions at all, especially before speaking. It would be nice for everyone, really, you don't have to say it out loud or put it in the chat unless you want to, but reflect on, did your parents teach you how to regulate your emotions? Hopefully the answer for some of you is yes, but for a lot of us it's no, because they didn't know. Did they teach you in school how to regulate your emotions? My answer is no. They didn't teach me anything about emotions at all. Nobody did. The first time I learned about mental health and that kind of stuff was in my psychology 101 class. And that's true for a lot of people. So we're not learning how, as a child, how to regulate our emotions so that we can communicate effectively. Also, substance use puts us at an even higher risk of not being mindful of our speech. So basically, anytime we're emotionally dysregulated or under the influence of something, the emotional centers of our brain are really highly activated, this limbic system, and then the rational part of our brain, the prefrontal cortex, kind of goes offline in a way, not totally, but there's less activity there. So we're not able to speak calmly, rationally, or effectively in those moments. So you really have to be able to be as emotionally regulated as possible, which is why whenever you're upset about something and you want to communicate it to someone, you want to take some time first to separate from that situation, reflect within yourself, regulate yourself, figure out what you're really wanting to say instead of just reacting, right? And then go communicate. And we often don't even do that. So a couple of great resources to up your communication game if you're interested are the DBT interpersonal effectiveness skills, which is on that website that I talked about before, the link that's in the workbook. And also Dale Carnegie's classic book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, has a lot of good tips in there. And if you don't have the time or attention span to read the whole book, in the workbook, there's a link to a website that has a really great summary of all the principles that he talks about, kind of the Cliff Notes version, I guess. And so Abraham, if you will scroll down into the workbook, the question that we're going to go over, this one's it has a long introduction, so I'm going to read it to you really quick.
Yes.
Well,
I am sharing that right now.
okay. So it's the first question on the in the communication section. So some ineffective or harmful communication methods include making assumptions, or what's sometimes called mind reading, expecting others to read our minds, using blaming language that raises the defenses of others, valuing competition over compromise and cooperation, the desire to be right over being effective, essentially, communicating while emotionally dysregulated, yelling, and putting others down to make you feel better about yourself. Those are not all of them. It's not an exhaustive list, but that's a lot of the typical harmful communication methods we see. So what are some ineffective or harmful communication patterns that you've noticed within yourself that you would like to improve? It could be something in that list or something else that you come up with.
Thank you so much, Dr. Barnes. I'll answer first. Communication has been an issue for me, definitely in the past in relationships, right? So, I was not a good communicator. So, I would do what you were talking about, right? I would sit on the couch and pout, and I would wait for my spouse to, one, recognize I wasn't feeling well, two, automatically know what it was about, and then three, have the perfect thing to say to help me out. How unfair, right? She's got her own things going on, and she's got, all this stuff she's trying to do, and she has to take care of a big baby on the couch, right? But it wasn't, anything having to do with me. It was just, I wasn't taught how to effectively communicate. And so that's one thing I do now. I make sure I'm using my words. I make sure I'm using I statements. I have been accusatory before. I have all wanted to be right. I have prioritized being right over being effective. So now I have to, I look at my communication and I think, well, do I want to be right? Do I want to be heard? Or do I want to be effective? So sometimes just me getting it out, just me venting, just me being heard, that's awesome. You know what I mean? That's actually helping me a ton. But really, so I really want to be heard or be effective. Those two, I no longer need to be right. And so I'm really proud of myself. Yay me. I don't have to be in that toxic communication thing anymore. So I'm really happy about that. So Dr. Barnes, how about you? With your communication, is there any of this that you still work on or have worked on and had to work on in the past?
Yeah, so I'm autistic, so I've had a lot of problems with communication in my life. And I think probably the biggest one is I think very differently than other people, I've noticed. And so when I'm trying to explain myself, I'm often misunderstood. And then that makes me, emotionally dysregulated because I'm like, you're not hearing me, right? And so being able to learn how to do emotional regulation skills has been really helpful in the moment. And also being able to know that this person is not trying to misunderstand me usually. We just have differences in the way that we communicate. And so being able to slow down to be present, really listen to them and figure out how I can, sometimes I have to say things a few different ways in order to find the way that it lands for that person. So just being able to be patient with that, because it is sometimes hard to get across what we're meaning with language is limiting, basically, since I can't just spin the feeling over to somebody, I have to translate it, and that can be hard sometimes.
Thank you so much, Dr. Barnes. And, one thing also that helped me was when I recognized how my trauma was informing the way I process things I hear, right? So I would find my, spouses, my ex-spouses, probably one of the reasons why they're my ex-spouses, right? They would say things and I would always take it negatively. That's because I had low self-esteem, low opinion of myself, a lot of unresolved trauma, right? And so whenever I was able to address these things, now when you say things, I take them more positively. So understanding how that trauma affects how we process the information was also extremely helpful for me. So jumping into the chat, Mary says, I like to teach people the 4 agreements in regards to communicating well. Awesome. Tracy says, I am way too good at the silent treatment. No, I hear you on that, Tracy. Willamette says, thanks again, everyone, for this very interesting and helpful presentation. It is our pleasure. Thank you for joining us. Awesome. So everybody, thank you guys so much. Yes, I will send out, if you email me, send me your email address, I will send you copies of our slides. Okay. And so that way you guys can all have this information. So I just thank you guys all so much for talking about communication. I mean, it's extremely important and something I feel like that is really overlooked. I will put my email in the chat, and then, teaching our clients, how to be effective communicators, I feel like is extremely important because a lot of our clients really struggle talking to, individuals in, positions of authority, physicians, teachers, police officers, judges, right? And so teaching our clients to be able to better advocate for themselves is extremely important. And so even me now, I go to the doctor sometimes, I've had physicians where I feel like they just bulldoze me, right? And so I was intimidated. Now I have a physician, I actually communicate well with her, and we're a team, we collaborate, right? And so that's just a really awesome feeling. So, but I have been intimidated in the past, with communication. So with me, what happened, what helped, practice. Every day, I annoy my kids, I make them talk, and they're teenagers, they do not want to talk about anything. But we talk a little bit, we just keep practicing, we keep doing it. We stumble, we make mistakes, but it's all good, man. It's all good, I'm just really proud of all the work that we're continuing to do to take these healthy risks. So, Dr. Barnes, how about you? Do you have any closing thoughts on communication or on today's training before we get out of here?
Yeah, I just want to emphasize and kind of link some of these topics together that I think it was Jim put in the chat earlier. I love this. It says, so there was a whole chapter devoted to self-care. It was titled "To Care for Oneself is to Care for the World." That is so true. And you are yes, we all live in a shared reality, a shared world, but we also have our own individual world. It's really crazy to think about how my individual world is almost completely different than Abraham's and all of y'all's, right? We have so much going on inside us with that in our own context. So to care for our world, caring for ourselves is what we need to do to be able to have that ripple impact. That's going to obviously, change your individual world, but will also likely have a ripple effect to the rest of the world as well. So self-care, right? You have to be able to respect yourself and communicate well with yourself to be able to do that. And also increasing your self-care helps with your self-respect and respecting other people there. And obviously sobriety is part of that, right? All of these things are supposed to connect to each other because you really need to be able to come at it from all those different aspects. So to be able to enhance the effectiveness of all of them, right? The more self-respect I have, the more self-care I'm going to do. The better I communicate with myself and other people, the easier it's going to be for me able to cope with life. And I don't have to rely on substances so much, right? So they all really do work together. And also I just want to say thank you for everyone's participation. Y'all have been really awesome in the chat today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Barnes. You're totally right. So with Walking in Balance, we're getting our clients to increase their self-worth, improve their self-worth, then from that point, they're going to create better habits, right? More healthy habits. And so we're going to speak these things into existence, right? Just continue to tell ourselves every day, we rock, we are beautiful, we are powerful. And so I'm just really excited. I'm really jazzed about the wellness. I'm really, I can feel the healing in this group. I just appreciate your guys' comments a lot. And we're going to continue to build these wellness communities, and it's just going to extend out from there. So I do want to let you guys know that if you guys email me, I put my email in the chat, bearpawa@gmail.com. I can send you guys the slides and a PDF of the workbook. We are also holding an instructor training. If you would like to become a certified walking in balance facilitator, we have that. We are going to have that opportunity. I will have a flyer and information for that at our next training. This training is going to take place in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and that's going to be October 26th and 27th. So if you just want to start thinking about it now, coming down to Tulsa, we're going to spend 2 days, and we're going to really go through this. We're going to have instructor manuals. You'll get some mindfulness craft kits. You'll get some workbooks for your clients. And we'll really get into this so that you can then instruct the Walking in Balance curriculum. So we're really excited about that. So thank you guys also.
Really quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, just to pitch for that as well. I know sometimes if you haven't been to Oklahoma and there may be some, maybe Tulsa doesn't seem that exciting. I just want to give a shout out to Tulsa. Tulsa is awesome and it has so much to offer. So obviously come to the training for the training, and also you'll be surrounded with a lot of opportunity, the gathering place, and there's lots of nature things to do here, and you get basically a good blend of city and country experience here. So highly recommend. We would love to have you all in person in October.
Yes, definitely. So with that, I'm going to close with sending you all good energy, healing of strength. You deserve to put yourself first, to focus on your health. You guys are awesome. You guys rock. Thank you guys all for everything you're doing in our communities to make them better. I really appreciate it. Much love to everybody. And I will see you guys all next Friday for our last session. So thank you guys. Awesome. Have a good one. We're on time, man. We rock. Thank you, Dr. Barnes. I really appreciate it. This was awesome. This is awesome today. I love it. I love it. I love the healing. So thank you, Steve. Also, he may have had to jump off to get to another training. But I hope you guys all have a great weekend. Find some time for your self-care, right? Take care of yourselves. You guys deserve it. And so I will see you guys all next week. Dr. Barnes, have a great Friday, rest of your Friday. And I'll talk to you in a little bit.
Yeah, you as well. Bye, everyone.